Are you still manually writing your medical records? Imagine lightening the mental load of remembering an entire day's worth of patient care. With Scribe, the first AI-powered veterinary soap creator, you can create accurate medical records effortlessly, as if you had a personal scribe in your pocket. Scribe started with a brother's desire to help his veterinarian sister get home on time, and it has since grown to support hundreds of vet clinics across North America and beyond. The company is deeply committed to improving veterinary wellness, work-life balance, and reducing burnout. Interested in trying it out? Visit scribenote.com to sign up for a free trial that includes 50 medical or dental records and access to all features, no credit card required. For Reviving VetMed listeners, use the link in the show notes for 100 free notes. That's 50 more than the intro free trial. You can also book a demo call with no obligation to sign up. Discover how Scribe can help streamline your workflow and ease your day. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Reviving VetMed. In today's episode, we're diving into the significant strides being made in the veterinary profession to foster healthier, safer, and more supportive work environments. Specifically, we'll be talking about the creation of the Veterinary Visionaries initiative and the development of the Psychological Health and Safety Guidelines. These guidelines offer a blueprint for creating and sustaining workplaces where veterinary professionals can thrive. I'm excited to explore what these guidelines cover and share with you how they can be effectively implemented in your practice. So let's go ahead and get into the episode.
This is the Reviving VetMed podcast, and I'm your host, Dr. Marie Hollowaychuk. And my mission is to improve the mental health and well-being of veterinary professionals around the world.
So in the spring of 2022, Veterinary Visionaries was established by the American Animal Hospital Association as a forward-looking collaboration involving nearly 50 veterinary health stakeholders. This initiative was aimed to address the growing challenges in the vet profession through a crowdsourced problem-solving event. Some of you might have remembered when this event was shared across social media. I think it was unlike anything that we'd experienced in VetMed before. And shockingly, the event gathered more than 130 big ideas. And ultimately, the winning proposal was submitted by Coral Doherty, a registered veterinary technologist who is from Canada. She lives in Manitoba, just a couple of provinces away from me. And Coral's big idea was focused on developing psychological health and safety guidelines for veterinary organizations, potentially leading to accreditation for those adopting best practices. So for those of you who don't know Coral, she has been involved in psychological health and safety in general for quite some time. She certainly experienced some situations in her veterinary career that were not psychologically safe situations, and since leaving veterinary practice, she has really dedicated her time and energy to supporting these initiatives. So because Coral's submission was the one that was accepted, basically the American Animal Hospital Association endorsed the Veterinary Visionaries working together to look at establishing psychological health and safety guidelines for veterinary practices. So there was a dedicated task force that included volunteers from the US and Canada who were vested in the mental health and emotional well-being of veterinary professionals. And ultimately, they created these guidelines, which I'm going to link to in the show notes and I'm going to review today, that serve as a vital tool in creating workplaces where employees feel safe, valued, and supported. So ultimately, at the end of the day, this is what all of us want, right? We all want to work in an environment where we feel that we aren't going to be harmed, where we feel that we are valued and appreciated by our bosses and our clients, and we feel that we're getting the support that we need. Because when we don't have those things, then that is when we are lacking psychological safety, and that is where harm can be done in terms of people ultimately experiencing mental health problems. So just to put this in perspective, I'm going to share a couple of experiences just to highlight the difference between psychologically safe and unsafe environment. So I think we've all probably worked in a practice where we had an experience that didn't lend itself to psychological health and safety. Maybe you were a technician that worked in a practice and you made a mistake with one of the patients and you brought that to the attention of the supervising veterinarian and you got in trouble. They yelled at you. They chastised you. They said, how could this have happened? And you've put my license at risk. That is going to create a situation where you do not feel safe to speak up when you make a mistake or when something goes wrong or when there's a concern that you have about a patient. We can also have situations where we don't feel psychologically safe because of other reasons. So I work at a practice in downtown Seattle, and there are a lot of unhoused individuals who live in the area. And it has become a discussion amongst the hospital in terms of how do we feel safe, walking pets outside of the hospital when there are some individuals that might be under the influence of substances or maybe experiencing their own mental health challenges. And if measures aren't put in place to make sure that team members feel comfortable in a situation like that, then that is going to erode the psychological health and safety of those team members. So this can be anything related to the culture of the practice, the way that individuals in the practice communicate, to the safety of individuals from a physical perspective in terms of safety from radiation, safety from dog or cat bites. So many different things go into psychological health and safety in practice, and we are going to go into many of those today. Now, I do want to highlight the fact that I'm very proud to say that here in Canada, we have had the first ever national standard for psychological health and safety in workplaces in amongst all countries in the world. So this is really amazing in that the different organizations, including the Mental Health Commission of Canada, have been involved in creating these guidelines or these pillars, of which there are 12 pillars and 13 if you work in the healthcare field, that they really want workplaces to take note of and take steps towards making sure that team members and employees feel psychologically safe and healthy in work environments. Now, the difference between those Canadian guidelines and those created by the AAHA Veterinary Visionaries focus group is that those created by AAHA are specific to the veterinary space. So that's a really, really wonderful thing, and hopefully something that we can work on implementing across veterinary practices around the world. So I'm going to go through the core guidelines, and I'm going to do this with just an overview. Of course, we could probably dedicate hours to going through these guidelines. Just to put it in perspective, the guidelines are more than 40 pages long. So I will share those guidelines in the show notes, as I mentioned, and I want to today just take some time to just break down the general content that is included in the guidelines. So the Veterinary Visionaries Psychological Health and Safety Guidelines is broken up into 4 categories, including organizational culture, workplace experience, worker engagement, and relationships. And I'm going to go over each one of these categories and the guidelines within them in more detail. So I think all of us can appreciate that the commitment to psychological health and safety, or really any culture shift in the hospital, has to come from the top. Leadership plays such a crucial role in setting the tone and prioritizing different initiatives within the organization, and mental health and wellness is no exception to this. So some different strategies that practices can think about implementing when it comes to this systemic commitment by leadership is to, of course, begin with leadership training. So I do think it is really important for leaders to be trained and to understand the comprehensive nature of psychological health and safety in the workplace. In addition to that, they need to understand what their role is in promoting a healthy work culture and a psychologically safe environment. So when I have my workplace wellbeing program that runs for 4 weeks, part of that training, of course, that includes leaders as the vast majority, is to do a psychologically safe self-assessment as a leader and to talk about different strategies for promoting psychological health and safety in the workplace. So again, leaders must recognize what this is and how they contribute to it as a foundation before they can make changes. I think in addition to the understanding and the knowledge around psychological health and safety, leaders also must publicly commit to these mental health initiatives. So whatever they're doing to support the mental health of their teams, they want to make sure that they're talking openly about it. This isn't just something that the hospital manager shares kind of on the down low. This should be something that the practice owner or that the organization is communicating as well, and that they're also modeling the values and the culture in their daily actions. So again, if there is a commitment to work-life balance, for example, then they are living into that value by also not sending work email on the weekends or, leaving work on time when their work is finished or whatever it might be. The other thing that is very helpful as a strategy under the systemic commitment by leadership to this culture of psychological health and safety is to do regular check-ins. So connecting with the team regularly to see what progress they're making on their goals with regards to mental health and psychological safety in the workplace and making any necessary adjustments. I think they need to be open to feedback on whether or not the culture is changing and what they can do differently to improve that. So the second guideline is clear communications. So like so many things I talk about when it comes to well-being, communication is one of those foundational pieces that we just can't get away from. So much of what goes wrong when it comes to mental health and wellness has to do with communication. So what this means is that there are clear and open communications to help prevent any misunderstandings and to build trust within the team. This is so important that we have this open and transparent communication. This makes sure that everybody is on the same page regarding any expectations, regarding any policies, rules, changes within the practice, and so on and so forth. So what does clear communication look like? Well, this can be regular team meetings where it's not just information delivery. I'm a big believer in not having team meetings to just share information. Information can be shared in an email. Team meetings are an opportunity for team members to share their concerns, give feedback, offer updates, offer suggestions. We want that to be the culture of the meetings, that there's this open and honest discussion. Other examples of strategies for clear communication has to do with having many communication channels. So again, not everybody wants to read information via email. Can there be a newsletter or a bulletin board to keep staff informed? Are there Slack channels that you can use? Can you have an ongoing WhatsApp chat or other chat that people can pop into to share information? The idea being that you don't want anybody to miss being informed of something that is important, because again, it's not conducive to psychological health and safety when there's information that is not shared with everyone. I do think it's important as well to even go a step further and consider having communication training for team members so that everyone can gain the skills necessary to have that direct communication, to practice that reflective listening, to use clear, empathetic messaging, and all of the things that are going to make communication open, transparent, and comfortable. So the third guideline within organizational culture is protection from threats of actual violence, bullying, harassment, or discrimination. So I think this one kind of goes without saying, but I will say it anyways, that having a safe environment free from violence, bullying, discrimination, or harassment is fundamental for psychological safety. I have been in work environments where there were bullies before, and it makes it an incredibly uncomfortable and unsafe environment. So we want to get in front of this as soon as we possibly can. So what does this mean for strategies that we can implement? Well, I'm going to link to an episode I recorded previously on bullying in the workplace, but it goes without saying that there have to be policies and procedures in place. So there has to be the development and enforcement of a really comprehensive anti-bullying and anti-harassment policy. It's important to make sure that all of the team members are aware of what to do if there are these issues. Who do they report to? How are these going to get addressed? And that there's training programs that are conducted regularly so that team members know what is bullying, what is harassment, what is okay and what is not okay. And I just went through a similar training with an organization that I locum for, and I learned something new. I think things are always changing, and it's important to reinforce these concepts for individuals. The other thing that is important in terms of strategies within this category or this guideline is to establish some sort of confidential reporting system and make sure that there is access to counseling services for anybody who is affected. So this can be really challenging in small practices, right? Where everybody knows everybody. And it's like, well, who do I go to? Well, you kind of have to go to the manager or the practice owner. Well, what if the practice owner and the practice manager are best buds and the practice manager is the bully? This can be really, really challenging. In larger organizations, there are often these confidential reporting systems, but that isn't always an option. So if this is the case, I think it's important in practices to make sure that there is the ability to offer feedback somehow in a confidential way until team members all feel safe to talk openly and transparently about these issues. And then, of course, access to counseling services for affected staff goes without saying. Once again, that at least here in Canada, the good news is that most of the provincial veterinary medical associations offer some form of EAP. And of course, more and more veterinary practices and organizations are also offering EAP to their team members. So again, reminding team members of that and encouraging them to take advantage of it. And the fourth guideline within organizational culture relates to moral injury and trauma-informed practices. So I think it goes without saying, and again, I've had previous podcast episodes on ethical dilemmas and moral injury. These are rampant within the veterinary space, and they can have really significant impacts on our mental health. Anytime we're going against our moral and ethical code, there's going to be a hit to our mental health. And trauma is the same. We experience trauma in our jobs when we witness neglect, when we have clients that yell at us, when we make a mistake and a patient dies. All of these are traumatizing situations. So we want to make sure that we are adopting trauma-informed practices to help support team members who are experiencing these challenges. So what does this mean in terms of strategies? Well, offering some sort of trauma-informed care training. And I'm glad to say that there are more and more of these trainings available. Once again, I think that this is important for the leadership and the management to engage in this sort of training where they learn about trauma-informed care principles to help staff understand and support each other when they're dealing with any sort of moral injury or traumatizing situation. Additionally, other strategies include offering support resources, so making sure that counseling services are available, offering access to peer support groups as well. So the Canadian Vet Med Association, for example, offers all of its members access to Together All. And so that is a peer support service that is available and gives a space for those who are experiencing any injuries related to moral stress or trauma to have a space in which they can connect with others. And then just in general, if it's not an online space, just having a safe space within the practice where team members can talk about their experiences and receive support, guidance, empathy without any sort of judgment. So again, it's not that we're hearing this out and we're telling people, that's just a part of vet medicine, or, tomorrow's going to be a better day. But to really listen and meet people where they're at. If they're really struggling in the face of some of these issues, then we do want to be empathetic and supportive and non-judging in those situations. Okay, so those are the 4 guidelines under organizational culture. The next subheading or the next category within the psychological health and safety guidelines is workplace experience. And this involves guideline number 5, which is role clarity and expectations. So you wouldn't think that this would have much of an impact on psychological health and safety, but you can imagine if you go to work and you don't really know what's expected of you, that is going to be unsettling. So this is where clear roles and expectations are outlined to make sure that team members know what they're responsible for and how they are contributing to the goals of the practice. So again, a concept that for whatever reason has been relatively foreign in the veterinary space, which is having detailed job descriptions. We don't just tell a technician, hey, we're hiring you to be a vet tech, so just come and be a vet tech. But we have it explicitly outlined what they are responsible for within their job as a vet tech. So again, specific responsibilities and performance expectations. When it comes to role clarity and expectations, regular reviews are another strategy that can be used to make sure that team members have the opportunity to talk about their roles, to clarify any expectations, and to make adjustments as needed based on where they're at. And then again, some sort of feedback mechanism where team members can provide feedback on their role and make suggestions for any improvements that might be needed. Now, guideline number 6 under workplace experiences is job autonomy. So this is where we give employees or team members some control over their work. We know that autonomy increases job satisfaction quite substantially, and it also reduces stress. So what this means in terms of strategies is that we want to empower our team by giving them some decisions that they can make pertaining to their work tasks or the way in which they're doing their work. I think sometimes as leaders, we can get into a space of micromanaging, okay, well, I need you to do this, but I need you to do it exactly this way. And we want to take a step back because that's not creating a psychologically safe environment when we're hovering over somebody. So giving team members the latitude to, if they can't make the decisions on their own, can they at least do work tasks the way they want to do them? The other thing that we want to do is make sure that there are flexible work options. So this might mean flexible scheduling or work arrangements, especially where individuals have specific accommodations. We're seeing this more and more in the veterinary space where we have team members that have accommodations based on visible and non-visible disabilities. So in accommodating that, can we be flexible with how an individual is working? And then another strategy as well is encouraging team members to take initiative. So making sure that team members know, we want to hear your ideas. We want to make things better. We want you to tell us what you think would improve the work environment or any processes. And again, that's one of the foundational pieces of psychological safety, is recognizing I don't have all the answers. We've got room for improvement, and we're looking to you to help us do that. Okay, so another category when it comes to the psychological health and safety guidelines is worker engagement. So guideline number 7 under worker engagement is equitable participation in decision-making. So this is where we are involving all of our team members in decision-making processes, which fosters a sense of ownership and respect. Again, when everyone feels like they are a part of the group, that they are helping with making decisions, that their opinion is respected, this is going to improve their overall job satisfaction. So some examples of strategies include making sure that individuals are involved in meetings, especially where there are decisions that are being made about their particular work, asking their input, asking for their feedback. This is where you can also distribute surveys or use suggestion boxes if you want to gather ideas and opinions from all team members anonymously rather than in an in-person staff meeting. And then making sure that there are committees, if you work in a very large hospital or practice environment, where many different team members are represented when making key decisions within the practice or the hospital. So again, the key here being we want to make sure that everybody has participation in key decisions, or at least that everyone has the opportunity to be represented by someone else in making those decisions. Guideline number 8 under worker engagement is recognition and reward. So again, I've recorded a podcast episode on this before, which I can link to in the show notes, but we want to acknowledge that recognizing and rewarding our team members boosts their morale and it keeps them motivated. Okay. So what can we do in terms of strategies here, where there can certainly be recognition programs? So maybe these are formal recognition programs where you celebrate achievements or milestones, anniversaries at the practice, that sort of thing. You might have shout outs in team meetings. You might have a team member of the month, whatever it is, but you're offering recognition. You can also offer personalized rewards such as additional time off, gift cards, professional development opportunities based on individual preferences. There's lots of different things you can do. And I talk about that a lot in my episode on appreciation. At the end of the day, you really want to make sure that you are regularly and habitually acknowledging your team members, thanking them for their hard work and contributions, and being very specific about what it is that you're grateful for. Not just, I appreciate you, but here's what you do that I appreciate so much, and this is why. So guideline number 9 under worker engagement is opportunities for growth and advancement. So we know that providing opportunities for professional growth helps to retain talent and makes team members feel valued. So again, this is in terms of strategies, offering access to training programs, workshops, conferences, retreats, whatever it is that is relevant to that team member's role and their interest. This means offering clear career pathways and promotion criteria within your practice if people want to move up. Don't have it be so ambiguous where people just don't see where they're going to grow in their role. Make sure that they know this is where we see your trajectory, or this is the possible trajectory that you have. Another strategy, of course, is mentorship programs. So making sure that you have mentors that are assigned to team members and to support team members in their career development and professional growth. And then the other category under the psychological health and safety guidelines, last but not least, is relationships. So under relationships, we have guideline number 10, which is civility and respect. So this is fostering a culture of civility and respect to make a positive work environment. So when it comes to strategies, we have respect policies. So these are developed policies that we enforce that promote respectful behavior and address anybody who is stepping outside of those behaviors. So again, these are the norms for behavior that hospitals, ideally as a group, come to agree upon and then hold each other accountable for. There can be training sessions on workplace civility and respect and what that looks like. And then, of course, we want to make sure that leaders are modeling respectful behavior and that they are holding people accountable by addressing any issues of incivility as quickly as possible. And that coincides with the bullying behaviors that we talked about previously. And then last but not least, guideline number 11 under relationships category is social support, and in other words, workplace relationships. So we know that strong supportive workplace relationships contribute to overall well-being and job satisfaction. So what this means in terms of strategies are team building activities. So regularly getting the team together to have social time together. This, of course, strengthens relationships. It builds camaraderie, and that translates to how people treat each other in the workplace. Social support can also be in the form of peer support networks or buddy systems to make sure that staff feel connected and supported, and just really encouraging social interaction as much as possible. So that can be informal interactions, such as during breaks or lunches, and more formal interactions, such as, again, team gatherings, but altogether just really wanting to build a supportive work environment. So again, just recapping, the 4 categories are organizational culture, workplace experience, worker engagement, and relationships. And we've got those 11 guidelines that I broke down individually for you all together. And these guidelines really at the end of the day are designed to be integrated into every aspect of your practice or workplace, from leadership and communication to everyday interactions and decision making. And by embedding these guidelines and these practices into your workplace, you're not just improving the well-being of your team, but you're also improving the overall care provided to your patients, because we all know that a team that is feeling well, that feels psychologically safe, that can talk to each other openly, that, feels like they are working together towards a common goal, they are ultimately going to take better care of their clients and their patients. So by embracing the psychological health and safety guidelines, veterinary practices can create this work environment where everybody feels valued, supported, and empowered. So again, as we continue to navigate the challenges of the veterinary profession, I hope that these guidelines offer you a roadmap to a healthier and more sustainable future for everybody involved. So that's it for this episode of Reviving Vet Med. I hope that you found this information on psychological health and safety guidelines valuable. And if so, I hope that you'll share this episode with a colleague and subscribe to our podcast to stay updated on future episodes. If you're interested in the resources from today's episode, please check out the show notes. You can also follow us on social media at Reviving Vet Med for more tips and strategies for well-being in vet medicine. If you have any questions about today's episode, suggestions for future topics, or inquiries about sponsorship, please email us at podcast@revivingvetmed.com. I'd like to thank Asia and her team at Bearbeat Productions for producing this episode, and I'd like to thank you for listening. I hope you'll tune in next time, because together we can make a difference in the veterinary profession.